Hello and welcome to Chabot News for Thursday, February 12th, 2026. My name is Alexa and today we'll be covering the latest on Nancy Guthrie, ice walkouts, and a baby elephant. In entertainment news, Chris will tell you all about Tim McGraw. And finally, in sports news, Greg has the latest updates on the puppy ball. All that and more coming up in today's edition of Chabot News. The search for Nancy Guthrie has now entered its 9th day. So far, no suspects have been named. Guthrie's possible abductor or abductors are demanding $6 million by Monday's deadline of 5 p.m., according to CNN affiliate KGUN, citing a ransom note the station says they received. The news station also reports that the note includes a threat to Nancy Guthrie's life if the deadline isn't met. Ivan Rodriguez joins us live from Catalina Foothills, Arizona with the latest.
Nancy Guthrie was last seen by her family on January 31st, when she joined relatives for dinner and game night near her home outside Tucson, Arizona. The search for the 84-year-old is now in its 9th day. Former SWAT team captain Josh Sherrard says he doesn't believe there's been direct communication between the Guthrie family and any alleged abductors.
We still have no valid two-way communication with this possible hostage taker and the author of these ransom notes. It's been all one way. And I think that both sides are probably getting a little desperate as to start that communication before that deadline comes up.
The deadline in one of the initial purported ransom notes was for Monday at 5 p.m., demanding millions in Bitcoin. In a video released Saturday, Savannah Guthrie and her siblings issued a clear message.
We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
Retired FBI supervisory agent Lance Lessing says investigators are closely working with the Guthrie family.
They're following a pretty solid playbook, trying to humanize the victim initially in that first, trying to open lines of communication, trying to get proof of life. This second statement, very different, but still a playbook. Still offering to pay, offering to get that open line of communication. How do we pay?
I'm Ivan Rodriguez reporting.
Thank you for that report, Ivan. As of the 9th, the fate of Nancy Guthrie remains unknown. A setback on Tuesday for drug maker Moderna and its effort to develop a flu vaccine using mRNA technology. The Food and Drug Administration has refused to accept Moderna's application to review its proposed clinical trial. The agency said the application did not contain an adequate and well-controlled trial. But Moderna called the FDA's decision stunning because the agency had not previously said the trial was inadequate. Company leaders have requested a meeting with FDA officials to understand how to proceed. The Department of Health and Human Services has previously criticized mRNA technology, which was used to create vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic. HHS canceled 22 projects that focused on mRNA vaccine development last August. The department claims the vaccines failed to effectively protect against upper respiratory infections like COVID and the flu. This setback could stall next-generation flu vaccines and deepen doubts over mRNA technology, once seen as a technological breakthrough. Israel is tightening its grip on the occupied West Bank. That comes ahead of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's expected visit to the U.S. this week. Nick Robertson reports from Jerusalem.
It's really interesting because this same group of international countries that President Trump lent on to give support and credibility to his Gaza peace plan late last year that envisaged a Palestinian state is now sort of those same countries criticizing what Israel is doing because they see it as shutting down that possible pathway to a Palestinian state that President Trump's 20-point peace plan talked about. The Palestinian Authority sees this as just a way that war is being waged on the Palestinian people. That's what they say. Bezalel Smotrich, the far-right finance minister here in Israel, who's the author and the sort of engine behind this change that's making it easier for settlers to get property inside the West Bank, to get land inside the West Bank, a vision he's always had and one that has really pushed to enable settlers to not just take land, but to legitimize the taking of that land. And now this next step, while it seems an incremental part of a process that this far right, right-wing alliance in and around Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is intent on doing, although it seems incremental, it is significant because the push and the drive is there to do it from part of the Israeli side. And this is going to make it easier and therefore put pressure on those Palestinians inside the West Bank and drive them, they assess, to sort of live in smaller and smaller areas, be pushed into their big cities. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, Indonesia, Pakistan have all jointly signed a letter condemning this act by Israel. But remember, those were the 8 countries that President Trump went to in the margins of the UN General Assembly September last year when he was proposing his 20-point peace plan for Gaza. And they came back to him later and said, all this talk back in the fall of last year about annexation in the West Bank, we don't support that, we don't want it. So President Trump actually came out then and said he was against annexation of the West Bank. So all of that in context, those same countries that supported President Trump's 20-point peace plan, which included the possibility of a path to Palestinian statehood, are coming out again. So when President Trump meets with Prime Minister Netanyahu, these 8 nations, of course, and others, will be hoping that the president brings that up with the Israeli Prime Minister as an issue of concern.
Thanks, Nick. The issue is expected to loom large as President Trump meets with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with several key U.S. allies urging Washington to press Israel over actions they say could undermine any future path to Palestinian statehood. The U.S. has been working to cut off oil supplies to Cuba after ousting Venezuela's Nicolás Maduro. And Canada's largest airline says it is suspending flights to the island because it does not have enough jet fuel. Patrick Ottman has more from Havana.
As more and more time goes by and oil shipments don't arrive to Cuba, stop by the Trump administration's insistence that countries are no longer able to send the Cuban government, any kind of oil, saying that Cuba represents a threat to the United States. We are seeing the impacts more and more here. There are less cars on the road. Now we're hearing that airlines are cutting flights to Cuba because there's not any jet fuel for them here to be able to refuel and bring the passengers back home. So this is, of course, going to have an impact. There'll be less tourists coming here. It really becomes a chain reaction for the already struggling Cuban economy. Mexico is sending aid, hundreds of tons of food, but they're not at this point sending any oil under U.S. pressure to not do that. The Kremlin has said that Cuba is now facing a crisis, and the government here, essentially their old ally, is in deep trouble as what they call a U.S. chokehold continues on and on. We know the U.S. and Cuba are exchanging messages, they are holding talks. Remains to be seen, though, if any deal can be struck, because the U.S. is really insisting on regime change. The government leave power, open up to multi-party elections, that political prisoners here are freed, and a lot of other steps that the Cuban government, up until now, has been unwilling to agree to. Patrick Ottman, CNN, Havana.
Thanks, Patrick. U.S. and Cuban officials continue to hold talks, but with Washington demanding political reforms and Havana showing no signs of backing down, the stalemate is deepening and ordinary Cubans are feeling the strain. 2020 election deniers drove the FBI's seizures of ballots and other materials in Fulton County, Georgia last month. That's what newly unsealed court documents show. The affidavit filed by the FBI with a search warrant application was made public Tuesday as part of the lawsuit by Fulton County officials seeking to have the ballot materials returned. The affidavit says the FBI's investigation originated from a referral sent by Kurt Olson. He's the director of election security and integrity, appointed by President Trump. Olson was previously involved in the legal efforts to reverse Donald Trump's 2020 defeat to Joe Biden. Trump has claimed that he actually won Georgia in the 2020 election, but that has been refuted repeatedly, including by Republican officials in Georgia. Notably, the affidavit does not describe any claims of foreign interference, and that will likely raise further questions about why Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard was there at the Fulton County search. Now we go over to Chris with this week's entertainment report.
Thanks, Alexa. Tim McGraw is preparing to hit the road in a big way. The country singer announced a North American tour for this summer. He'll be joined by the Chicks and Lady A. The tour consists of primarily East Coast dates. It's a big comeback for McGraw. He had to pull out of his 2024 tour after suffering health setbacks that resulted in multiple back surgeries and a double knee replacement. Tickets for the tour went on sale Friday, February 6th. The pre-sale started Wednesday, February 4th. In other entertainment news, another daytime talk show is calling it quits. Sherri Shepherd's show Sherri will wrap up after its 4th season ends in the fall. It comes at the same time Kelly Clarkson announced she is ending her show. Unlike Clarkson's program, Shepherd's has been canceled. The company that produces it blamed what it calls an evolving daytime television landscape. But its leaders say they still believe in Shepherd and plan to try to find a home for her on other platforms. Shepherd rose to prominence as a comedian. She won an Emmy during her time co-hosting The View from 2007 to 2014 for Sherri. That is all for entertainment news this week. Now back to you, Alexa.
Thanks, Chris. The head of the agencies carrying out President Donald Trump's immigration enforcement appearing before lawmakers. Today's hearing happened amid heightened calls for oversight at the Department of Homeland Security. And as lawmakers debate potential changes to the DHS ahead of a funding deadline this Friday, Michael Yoshida reports. Lawmakers now face a Friday deadline to fund the Department of Homeland Security or risk a partial shutdown that would affect agencies including TSA and FEMA. Negotiations continue as investigations into the Minneapolis shootings remain underway. Many high school students around the country participated in the national walkout in protests of ICE tactics. One of those high schools was North Central High School in Indianapolis, Indiana. Let's go to Ella Rhodes of WTHR Indianapolis for her report.
Around 400 students at North Central High School walked out today. Also, several other students across Indy walked out of school too. It's all to protest ICE policies and its presence across the country.
I think that our voices are stronger as one, and when we come together, then we make a very large impact.
Students shouted and pleaded for change. Not old enough to vote, but old enough to know their First Amendment rights.
We're the future of this country. We're going to be the next politicians, the next leaders, and we need to stand up.
IMPD showed up to corral the massive crowd of students pouring onto 86th Street, interfering with traffic. In response to the walkout, Washington Township Metropolitan School District says they know demonstrations are happening at several schools and respect students' choice to engage in current events. Leaving campus during school hours without proper authorization is not permitted under school policy. If parents want their students to leave school, please follow the standard sign-out process through our attendance office. Students who leave class or campus without permission will be subject to consequences outlined in our Code of Conduct. Students didn't gather alone. City County Councilor Jesse Brown joined the protests to support students' efforts.
Let's all follow our students' example and walk out, put a stop to this system.
Councilor Brown spoke at another school walkout too.
I hope they find a sense of their own power. Right now, we're all feeling powerless, hopeless, we're doom scrolling.
But we are speaking out for people who do not have a voice to speak out.
As the next generation shows how they feel and where they stand.
Thanks for that concise report, Ella. Regardless of age, one should feel that they can openly and peacefully protest to make their voice heard. It is foundational to a democracy. Now we go to Greg with this week's sports report.
Thanks, Alexa. Last Sunday, February 8th, was time for Animal Planet's annual Puppy Bowl. Team Rough took on Team Fluff. This year's canine sports event on Super Bowl Sunday looked a little different. For the first time, there were 15 pups with special needs, and a special exposition game spotlighted senior dogs available for adoption. Team Oldies versus Team Goldies. In all, the Puppy Bowl highlighted 150 dogs from more than 70 shelters. For more information on the participating puppies, viewers were directed to puppybowl.com. The 3-hour show aired February 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern and was simulcast across Animal Planet, Discovery, TBS, True TV, HBO Max, and Discovery Plus. A few weeks ago, a Massachusetts man won a once-in-a-lifetime experience. He traveled to Super Bowl 60 on Sunday, February 8th, 2026 in Santa Clara, California, to see the New England Patriots face the Seattle Seahawks. As Logan Hall reported, he earned the opportunity by donating blood to the American Red Cross.
Eric Jellison, a lifelong Patriots fan and Wakefield local, never thought that donating blood would get him to the Super Bowl.
I have to say that I was very shocked, honestly. And a lot of times, like everyone says, with all the scams and things going on in the world, you don't know what to believe.
No, it wasn't a scam. Eric was randomly selected by the American Red Cross from a nationwide pool of donors to win a trip for two to Super Bowl 60.
When I hit the stadium, when I'm there in the parking lot, that's when it's really going to hit, and I'm just going to be in awe of the whole event.
Eric was in a traumatic accident when he was a kid, and a blood transfusion helped save his life. He's been a donor ever since. He's never been to an NFL game, but come Sunday, he'll be watching his team battle for the Lombardi Trophy, every fan's dream.
We are absolute fans. I mean, I have all my old jerseys, my Tyler, and you know, all those different things that you get over the years, posters and signs.
Kelly Eisner is the Director of Communications for the American Red Cross and hopes that this once-in-a-lifetime experience can help bring attention to an important cause.
Every 2 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs blood, and for, Eric to win this amazing prize for doing something that was so selfless, we love to be a part of that.
For someone who has watched every Super Bowl from his couch, Eric says this entire experience just feels surreal.
I'm just a regular person, and I'm just donating blood and just doing what I can to help others as best I can. And this reward just seems unbelievable.
Super Bowl 60 was played at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara on February 8th. Unfortunately for him, the Seattle Seahawks won 29-13. That's it for the Sports Report this week. Now back to you, Alexa.
Thanks, Greg. February is Heart Month, and there's a new limited time experience for the players of the popular game Fortnite. An Atlanta-based company came up with the offering to help players understand what children waiting for a heart transplant goes through. Caitlin Ross shows us.
So the game actually has two different layers to it.
Video game designer Brian Grayson says this is gaming for good, helping players feel empathy and understand what some kids face in real life.
Alice's journey is very similar to that, where she's not sure what to expect. This is a little scary. There are people supporting her.
Inside Fortnite's super pet world, players are introduced to Alice, a child waiting for a heart transplant. For the first time, the game includes a side quest built around that journey.
What is this journey like for real patients who are going through it? So we spent time to read real patient stories.
Developers designed the quest so players help build a mechanical heart, modeled after real devices used to support children while they wait for transplant. The goal is simple: help players experience what it feels like to walk alongside someone going through it.
What makes gaming different from every other form of media is you are the protagonist. You're not just passively seeing content. You are leaning in, you're making choices.
Ghost Gaming CEO Todd Harris says those choices matter. He calls this a compassion quest.
To be able to be empathetic and understand that this journey is a long one. And getting the heart is just the first part of the journey.
For Enduring Hearts, the nonprofit behind the partnership, Linda Lee Smith says the hope is that kids facing transplants see themselves reflected in the story and feel supported.
Hey, you have that moment where you're like, am I going to be able to be an adventurer anymore? And then you have that realization of course you can still pursue your dreams. Of course you can be an adventurer.
Thanks, Caitlin. This is now available globally and will stay live throughout this month in honor of Heart Month. Putting one foot in front of the other, that's how some military veterans in Nevada say they are coping. The group 22 Walk meets for monthly hikes with other veterans, helping them to clear their minds and strengthen their mental health. Evan Leake has more from Las Vegas.
With every step, Nathan French feels his problems disappear.
After I had a heart attack, I started walking a lot, and I realized that the walking was helping my mental health more than my physical health.
A realization putting Nathan on a path of purpose, starting the 22 Walk 3 years ago.
So I started a 22-mile walk on Veteran Suicide Awareness Day, and we've only done one of those. Team Red, White, and Blue asked me to do a weekly hike, and I'm like, I can do a monthly hike. And that started a few months ago, and here we are.
Call it a new mission for these military personnel. Warrior hikes with their new comrades to keep their minds clear.
We have 2 Army veterans that just met each other for the first time, and they're talking about, what units they were with and where they were at and, what they've seen. And that kind of builds that immediate camaraderie from someone that you've never met before in your life.
Ready to attack the hill.
The journey to the mountaintop eventually leads to these veterans opening up, sharing stories of the power of mental health and the toll it can take.
I had a friend that was in my squad commit suicide in front of us, and so something's got to be done. Veteran suicide is completely unnecessary, and if we can get out here and do stuff like this, and then I think we're actually being part of the solution, not the problem.
Maybe after the hike they'll pull me aside and they'll say thank you, like I needed that. I didn't even know I needed it. I didn't even know what this hike was all about, but now that I did it, I feel so much better.
Helping veterans reach new heights to get a better view of the valley and their lives.
Thanks for that report, Evan. The organizers of 22 Walk say they hike the first Saturday of every month. All veterans are welcome to join. Now we go to Enrique with this week's Top 5 segment.
Thanks, Alexa. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going over my top 5 distractions while writing the script. I was unable to think of anything meaningful to make, so I'm ranking distractions. At number 5, we have staring at the wall. It's not efficient at all, and it makes you lose your train of thought. You might regain it later on, but you're... Okay. I was distracted by that. We can add that to the list. And number 4, we have twirling your writing utensil. You can easily get away with this and make it a game for yourself to see how long you can go. And number 3, we have leaving your room. That's right, just leave. There's probably something better outside anyway. And number 2, we have listening to music. You can get to stare into space while listening to music you like, or just start thinking elsewhere. At the number 1 spot, we have sleeping. It's what I should have been doing instead of writing the script at the grand 2 a.m. Sleeping takes you away from anything. It also passes the time. That is all for Top 5. Back to the news with Alexa.
Thanks, Enrique. The Smithsonian National Zoo is celebrating the birth of an endangered Asian elephant for the first time in about 25 years. It says she was born Monday to elephants named Neelin and Spike. The zoo says Neelin's pregnancy lasted almost 21 months, and this is her first calf. The public gets to help name the baby by voting with donations. The zoo says its new addition will spend her first month or so bonding with her mother. Richmond Metro Zoo workers in Virginia are taking extra precautions to keep their animals safe during recent ice storms. These drafts have taken up residents inside, kept warm by massive heaters. Zoo staff also stocked up on backup generators and extra bedding to help fight the freeze. Animals that normally spend time outdoors had to be moved inside. Some babies at the zoo are being cared for by human caretakers to make sure they stay healthy and warm. Certain species are more than happy to frolic in the frigid temperatures. The wolves, snow leopards, and bison seem to feel right at home in the freeze. The zoo is still closed to the public due to icy pathways. They're hoping to reopen soon. That's all for Chabot News this week. Thanks to all the students and staff in the Mass Communications Department here at Chabot College for making this production possible. You can watch us anytime online at youtube.com/ChabotTV. Stay tuned to KCTH Channel 27 on Comcast for more Chabot TV.